Welcome back for a brand new season of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. If you're a return guest audience member, we welcome you back for a new season. If this is your first time on the show watching us, we welcome you as well. And we hope that you enjoy this new season. We have a lot of incredible guests who are going to be on this platform this season. And I just can't wait for you to see them in action and telling us their stories about what they do in this education space. But without further ado, I want to introduce our first guest of the season. This brother is an educator, an author, activist, national speaker. And guess what, y'all? He's coming straight out of Compton. So without further ado, I want to bring in the good brother, the revolutionary principal, the marathon principal, Mandela Rahh, to the show.
Let's get it.
What's going on, man?
Let's get it, man. How you feeling, King?
I'm doing good, brother.
All
so
right.
Glad to have you on the show.
Yes, sir. It's
So
good to be here, man. I appreciate you for having me, man. I know you've been doing some great work, man. I'm just happy to be here, man. I'm happy to be here, king to king.
Yes, sir, man. And it's just brothers like you that inspire me to do what I do on this platform and just in this space in general. So we have so much to talk about. But before we get into that, I just want to remind our audience that we are streaming on Apple Podcast, Spotify. We're on all streaming platforms. So if you want to hear more of this content, please subscribe to those different platforms, whichever one you listen to. And we're going to continue to provide you with some great content. So now that we got that first order of business out of the way, I'm going to hit you with this first question. And this is a question that I ask all of my guests. What brought you into the field of education? And just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. You know, listen, what got me into education, man, I come from a family of educators. Growing up in the city, my father was a professor for over 34 years. He helped build the Black Studies Department at Long Beach State. My mom was a teacher. And being the youngest of six, I grew up with educators, and I always thought they were like square. You know, I didn't want to be no teacher. I thought I was just going to be a rapper or a football player. That was my way out. I was like, you know, I'm going to be a millionaire or something. So I ain't trying to work no 9 to 5. I'm trying to do something else. You know what I mean? So I thought I was going to be a rapper, man. I went by solo, you know, and then that didn't work out. I was in football, you know, they called me wide load, you know, because I was a defensive tackle and I carried weight. So I tore my knee up, man. And then I always inspired people, though. I was always a motivator, and I always loved helping people. And I read this book called The Alchemist, and it was about this story of Santiago finding his purpose in life. And I just needed a job, but that story never left me. And I became a paraprofessional, a special ed assistant. And I fell in love with it, right? From there, I was teaching a class as a special ed assistant, and I was like, yo, this is my purpose. You know what I mean? This was my purpose. I started at like 18, quickly became a substitute teacher, and then I graduated with my bachelor's degree in Africana Studies, and then I got me a history credential and a special ed credential, started teaching at the middle school that my father graduated from in Watts, and then the rest is history, man. I wanted to get into education because I wanted to change the way I felt about education, because I was disconnected. I didn't see the relevance in learning this K through 12 curriculum because I didn't get exposure. I didn't feel like people walked, talked, and act like me was in the field. And I didn't see careers in regards to people that looked like me and came from where I came from in the fields that would make me want to pursue it. So I want to change that narrative. And I figured that's why I can be the why when it comes to that in education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you come from a family, as you mentioned, of educators. I know that your mother was an educator, your father, who's your namesake, educator himself. And we're going to talk about him a little bit because he's a fascinating and a revolutionary in his own right.
Right.
Doing some great grassroots work in the LA area. But I want you to tell me, how much of an influence did your family have in your journey as an educator? Because I know just because they were educators doesn't mean that you would automatically go down that path.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what drew you into this path?
You know, I think like in one part is being an educator, right? It's what you do, how you do it, and the influence like my father and my mother and my brothers and siblings had was they was always teaching me the game. And when I say the game, teaching me about the world, my father always gave me lectures. My father never put his hands on me. You know what I'm saying? He never, in my 33 years, have put his hands on me growing up, and I've done some crazy stuff. He never put his hands on me. He's always given me knowledge, and he the one that taught me and gave me sacred knowledge, and which I bring to my school right now. And the sacred knowledge was around key things. The slogan of "Change the world, don't let the world change you, son." He would always tell me that. He was every time I made a mistake, he was like, "Listen, change the world. Find who you are. Find your values. Find those things on that's going to establish you to be the man that we are trying to raise you to be. But you got to find that." Those was the type of reflective questions he would talk to me inherently, and I think those are things that I caught up on just as a man. My mom would tell me that, you know, she would call me Mandela. My middle name is Mandela, and she'd say, "Mandela, you have a rightful place in this world." She will always instill these positive affirmations in me, right? My siblings would I learned from them. I seen what they did, and I was able to be exposed to that. But at that age, I didn't like it. I wasn't connecting to it. But now, as an adult, I seen the exposure to those different avenues and learning from them, right? So you got the primary, and then you got secondary learning that I got from them. So when you talk about influence, I think as an educator, I'm an educator. I was an educator in or out of this school setting, right? I educate people on how to better their best, how to motivate them, teaching them things that they can benefit from. Then in the school setting is you want to make that change on a macro level in the city in which you come from, in the hearts and souls of young people, and that's why I decided to make that shift to make it in a school setting. Right. I got a lot of homies that's like, they're great educators. They teachers, they're motivators. The difference is they're doing a lot of their work outside the school setting, right? Which is great.
Right.
I figured like that impact in the school setting could be monumental. So my family kind of just think they were the influencers of that. I learned a lot from them, and I was lucky. You know, I was lucky to have that influence in my life, being raised in the city.
Yeah, and that's very fortunate because for a lot of us, we don't get to learn about our history until we get to college. That was
Fact.
when I started to learn about my history and what it's all about. But for you to get those gems at an early age, I mean, that's just so valuable and sacred.
Yeah.
And you don't really understand that until you get older. But you did mention your school. So you're at the U.
Right.
Now
Fact.
tell us about the U. What makes this school so special? And what are some of the initiatives that you are doing this year?
I mean, the biggest thing is that we're a small school. You know, everybody feels like somebody. I opened the school 2018. I was the founding principal 2017. Our gates opened August 2018, and to have a vision to open up a school, and to be saying like, hey, you got a chance to open up a school. If you got a chance to open up a school, I'm sure you're like, man, I ain't about to make up something or create something that's the same. I want to create something that is magical. I want to create something that's different. I want to create something that will actually be monumental when it comes to change. I want to create a movement. So, you know, from the logo to the name to the apparel to everything that we do was all about making that change. It was all about leading different, thinking different, and teaching different. So when it came to opening, that energy, that love manifests in our kids, right? It manifests in our teaching. It manifests in how we do things in our culture here. So that's one thing in the infrastructure and why we're special. But one of the other key things is we have a revolutionary house system. Our house system, we have the house of hustle, which is after Nipsey Hussle, the House of Motivation. We have the House of AOC after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which is the House of Advocacy. Then we have the House of Obama after Michelle Obama. That's the House of Friendship. And then we have the House of Kaepernick, which is the House of Courage. We gamify education. We make it where kids feel like they belong, and then they constructively and effectively compete with better and their best every day. I think that makes our school special. It makes teachers feel like, oh, I got something to work towards. And it makes me as a principal feel like this is a true family. We call this place the happiest place in Watts because we try to make it that way each and every day. You know, we try to make it the Disneyland of Watts. And we make it where it's a place where our aspiration and our vision is for every kid to achieve self-actualization. But for them to achieve that, we want them to come here and feel like they're not in the city in which they have to walk through gangs and drugs and all that stuff. They walk here and they feel like they're at Disneyland. So that's our vision. Of course, we got a long way to go and work hard at it, but that's the vision. I think that's what makes us special.
No, that's awesome. And another thing that you do at your school is restorative justice, which is something that I'm a big proponent of. Yep. I believe that with restorative justice, it gives our young people a voice and a space for them to express how they're feeling, to express whatever trauma they're dealing with in their communities and maybe in their households, and also to speak up about the issues that so many of us are reluctant to speak out on, particularly around race and culture and everything that's transpiring in our country. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like for you to just share how much of a role that restorative justice has played in maximizing student performance and building a positive culture at your school.
Now. Come on, now let's start. Let's get this really talking, right? Because you know, restorative justice. A lot of people don't know. That's where I became outside the classroom. I became a restorative justice coordinator. I was able to do that because I was doing a lot of restorative justice practices before, like, it was like really claimed to be cool, you know what I mean? Or we was just doing circle in my classroom, and I didn't know no name to it in regard to restorative practices. But when it comes to breaking down like our school and how restorative justice practices like supports our school, I take the justice out of it, and I talk about building a restorative school, right? And when you think about restore, right, you're talking about putting something back in its rightful place. So before you could talk about and think about restore, we had to think about the community we wanted to build.
Yes.
So we can restore it back to that. We ain't even talking about justice. We're not even talking about none of that. What we're talking about is a building, a philosophy of we want to build the right community. So if something happened, we can restore it back. Where a lot of people push restorative justice and they're thinking about the justice, they're thinking about how we going to deal with conflict, how we going to deal with that before they even think about building a community. So at the U, we was like, yo, we want to build a magical place. As a principal, I want to know every student. I want to know their name. I want to have some kind of form of a relationship with them, right? That's part of building a community. With our house system, we wanted to make sure that everybody feel involved. Right. Then we do family. So we have a assembly. We switch the name. We don't call our assemblies. At our school, we call it family. That language matters, right? And then we have something called kinship. That's our advisory. And in kinship, one day a week, everybody across the school do community building. They do how they build their own community in their classroom, which is important. So now you're talking about these levels, there's layers to it. So now in the classroom, they have built a community in their kinship or their advisory class where they feel connected. And then they build on top of that with our house system. Then they build on top of that with our school, right? So now when something happens, you have something to repair it or restore it back to. You feel me?
Yes,
so
sir.
Now that you're restoring it, now you got a magical place. So, you know, I always stress, like, you know, you forget the justice part. Right? You're going to get there, build this amazing community. You know what I'm saying? So that's the impact for us when we deal with things. So now when something happens, you know, they know that it's coming from a place of love. They know that if you come into the principal office, it's like, dang, somebody's gonna listen to me, somebody's gonna hear me, somebody's gonna feel me, right? Same thing with my teachers. And I always say to schools, like, restorative justice is not just with your students. What's the community you building with your organizational culture? So I make it an effort to get to know my staff too in our meetings. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Let's build community with the intent to make sure teachers feel like they belong, but not just feel like they belong, feel invested in the school. And when they feel invested in the school, they hopefully will be invested in their craft. And if they're invested in their craft, then that will manifest in the classroom. And if it manifests in the classroom, you see where I'm going with this? Now students are manifesting that with their work.
Yes.
So that's how we did. I know I went on, baby, but that's my bread and butter, baby. That's what we get to.
No, but that's why you're here, brother. That's why you're here, because I want you to talk that talk, right?
Sure,
And
yes,
to add on to what you're saying, by creating this utopian space, because we all want this space, but we don't quite know how to get there, right?
Yeah.
You're giving your students a sense of agency. You're giving them ownership of how this space is created. And that's such a powerful thing to give students. And we don't always do a great job of doing that for them. So I applaud you. I commend you for creating that space. But I do want to stay on this for a second. I do want to.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So we hear about social justice. We hear about cultural responsive leadership, which are becoming buzzwords. And in many ways, they've been co-opted by the popular educational landscape. Now, I see here in the background, Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
In some schools, they'll hang it up in February and say, you know what? We're practicing cultural responsiveness because we have a picture of Martin Luther King hanging up on our wall or on our bulletin board. But in essence, that in itself is performative. That's just a way of showing awareness.
Yep.
There still needs to be the action. And you are about that action, which is what I love about the you. Y'all always about that action. I've been able to catch some of the mini clips, on IG and Twitter, and it's just a magical place as you've described. But what I want to know from you is, in what ways can principals and school leaders build a capacity in those areas, particularly around cultural responsive leadership? And also a follow-up to that is, what can school districts and other school settings do to make sure that this is done with fidelity?
Yeah, I think it's important, right? So I break down cultural in three aspects. One is cultural awareness, right? As a leader, you need to be culturally aware. And it's complex. You need to understand the demographics. You need to understand everything in regards to your school, the community. You need to do a school environmental scan, right? And when you do the school environmental scan, you're not only provided with the sacred knowledge of the community, but you're starting to learn about the history. You're starting to learn these different things. And it's really tied to the values of me personally. But I feel these values should connect with all leaders. Like it's the Sankofa principle of, to know where you're going, you have to remember and know where you came from.
Yes.
Right. So if you take that mindset of like, for us to get to our destination, we have to know and remember where we came from. So you got to dive deep in your community and the cultural awareness first. Then that's the first level, like being aware, culturally aware, school environmental scan, all positional scan as the leader. Then you start game planning for your destination to now be culturally responsive, right? So now you're going to respond to the information, the sacred knowledge that you got from the community, right? Yes. Then it's another layer for that for me is you're culturally responsive, but then the goal is to be culturally competent, right? Because the competence comes with being preventative, knowing the destination, and then knowing your toolkit is versatile, right? So at the for me as a leader, it's like, I'm bringing in resources. There got to be some non-negotiables. For you as a leader, you got to be courageous and say, there's some teachers that don't rock with everything that I rock with. That's cool. However, there are some things that are non-negotiable when it comes to the community, when it comes to the history, and when it comes to what is needed for our young people. And if our vision is for our kids to achieve self-actualization, they have to know themselves. They have to. And if they have to know themselves, that means you have to discuss the critical race theory. That means you have to talk about the Black experience. That means you have to start talking about the macroeconomics in regards of from the panic of 1907 to now, in regards of the experiences that have happened. If you say that you are trying to get students to achieve self-actualization without bringing that to the light and to the forefront, then you are doing a disservice to young people of color, right? And I think districts have to make this a real serious issue and move with urgency and not just talk about it, right? Like with the shirt in the conference, you got to be about it. And when you talk about it, and then when you talk about this, be about it, you got to be about it with your action. And your action is in three things for me. One is, number one thing, if you really want to be about it, and yeah, you had a conversation, which is cool. What are you doing with your money?
Right.
What you doing with the economics? Right? What you doing with your transactions?
Come on now.
Hey, principal, hey, district. Let's follow the transaction. So if you're talking about being culturally relevant, are you bringing in culturally relevant people? And are you dealing with companies that are Black and brown? Right?
Come on now.
So you can't talk about you want to be anti-racist and then it's only anti-racist stop when it comes to the money. You know, you talk that talk, but when you're talking about uplifting the Latinx community, uplifting the Black community in regards of economics, you fall short and you are in a position to make these changes. So I think that those things help us because we uplift our community. We look for ways where, and I specifically look for ways where I can get services from nonprofit organizations that give them game to support, to come up with contracts, to tell them how to get contracts, how to get their stuff done so they can do this work in the school, so they can go through all those different things. And that's uplifting the community. That's teaching. That's sacred knowledge. And I think that's a way for many of our schools and districts to work with.
Right. And they have the community, right? So it's not always a case where the districts don't have the money.
Facts.
It's all about how you allocate the money to the different schools who need it the most. And I think more than anything, that's been the biggest issue in many of our school districts across the nation. And that just has to change. And even with this election season, you haven't heard a whole lot of education talk from the presidential candidates. Hopefully we'll hear some tonight. I'm hoping to hear a little bit more education talk tonight, but I'm not banking on it. I'm not putting my money on that.
Yeah. But I think it's important too. Vision, I think, is not really put on the top as much because I think the system devalues it to the sense of see, having a vision means that like I have a vision of my students having ownership, right? Like I want to produce owners. I want to produce business. I want to produce or at least somebody with an ownership mindset. The reason why I say the ownership mindset is if I don't want a student leaving the U without the mindset or empowered mindset of continuing the cycles of oppression. What do I mean by that? In order for them to break this condition of the cycle of oppression unknowingly, we have to provide them with knowledge, but we also need them to understand how this system works. No matter if you like capitalism or not, we are all living and operating in the world of capitalism, right? So you can want your own personal agendas, dismantle it, cool. But until then, you are operating in this. So I want my students to be aware that you are either a producer or a consumer in this world. You're either going to, and the way structurally it works is the system promotes and rewards owners way before they will do employees.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I got to be able to teach my students that. Not saying that everybody's going to be an owner, but you need to understand the game that you play. And that's just what I'm saying.
And you know what's funny? We don't learn about the rules of engagement. We try to get those rules of engagement in these communities where most of the people don't look like you and I.
Facts.
We're trying to figure it out. That's why we find ourselves behind the 8 ball when it
Yep.
comes to economics, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to ownership, whether it's home ownership, whether
Yep.
it's having our own business or our own enterprise.
Yep.
We're always digging ourselves out of the rabbit hole when it
Yep.
comes to that. So what you said really hit me, in a different way. It made me think about the Nation at Risk report back in the mid 80s with during the Reagan administration. And I really believe that that's why our school systems are the way they are today. Why we have such an excess of standardized testing, why we're still focused on college prep, and not as much on the vocations, which was a huge part of, the American fabric in the 70s and 80s. It was all about vocations, manufacturing, industrialization. And we shifted away from that and focused on colleges and academic enrichment, which I'm not saying is not important, but we got to get back to the vocations, because honestly, that's what will ultimately lead to ownership. That's what will lead to entrepreneurship. You can get 2-3 degrees. That doesn't mean that you're going to eventually become an owner.
Well, what's great about this was also this. I mean, in this world during the pandemic right now, almost everybody, not everybody, but there's a lot of teachers that are not in the school setting. That's why I said there's a different, like, a lot of people are educators. Like, so many people have courses out there to teach you sacred things that the school system don't teach us. They don't teach. There's things about how to do all these different trades of people making and having ownership off of knowledge, right? Having this sacred knowledge to provide for what the school system, for the most part, has failed, especially K through 12. But I want to double down. I think it's a for us as leaders, we have to be creative. We have to be creative in how we affirm, uplift, and really design a program that not only gives you analytical intelligence measures, but creative and practical intelligence measures. Right? What does that mean? That means, yes, I cannot change the game that, I got to play the rules of engagement in the public school system of SATs, it's tests, it's standardized test scores. Cool, got it. That's that game. I'm going to play it, whatever. But I know the sacred knowledge game is real, and that is where I can make the impact at. So if I know I want to make that impact, I need to creatively make room so that impact can be made. So that means creating enrichment times with a design plan to teach specific vocational skills. It is not good for a principal to say, like, hey, I know this information. I know this can transform and save my kid's life and get them to a place where they can get to, and sit back and say, well, you know what? I can't do it. You need to talk with the leadership team. You need to talk with the community, spread your vision, and say, this is the plan, right? And when I say creative intelligence, it means that, like, for example, I was in accelerated math class in middle school.
Okay.
But when I got to middle school, it was the first time I got to middle school. I got out of Compton Unified. It was my first time around white people at 12, right? I got the experience as soon as I got to a math class of being devalued because the way I walked, the way I talk, and the way I may deliver the message. Oh man, you can't be up in here, right? And this creative intelligence was, I knew that I could solve problems. I knew I had this practical and creative intelligence. I knew I had inspiring. I knew that also mathematically, if I was put in the right place and said, like, hey, you may say things differently, I could level up. But I didn't have that. And I'm not blaming the system. I'm just saying I never had that. So I don't know where I could have been at with my mathematical skills if I had somebody to say, hey, Ron, don't worry about the way you talk, man. You know these quadratics. Oh, you know this Pythagoras. Let's accelerate you. But it wasn't affirmed, right? So I think those are key things that need to be addressed, and needs to be addressed with a sense of urgency.
Right. And as you were talking, you're mentioning attributes. You're mentioning qualities that are very specific to our culture.
Yep.
Right. So when you look at the Common Core standards, where are you going to find those attributes? Because you and I both know that's not how we're assessed.
Yeah, right.
The way that we're assessed are based on Eurocentric intelligence measures.
Facts.
And as a result, those attributes you just mentioned tend to be overlooked.
Yeah.
But of course, you and I, we have a different lens when it comes to that. And that's something that I feel more schools and leaders need to develop a habit for, because that's part of affirming culture. That's part of being responsive to culture. And I don't care what the background is for the kid. You have to acknowledge those things and find a way to integrate it into the curriculum.
Yep.
We have to find a way. But let's switch gears and talk about this book you're writing, man. You've been posting little nuggets here and there, teasing us with some paragraphs. So go ahead and just tell us as much as you can about the book. I know it's not out yet, and I don't want you to spill the beans, but
not out yet.
Give us a snippet of what we can expect from this book.
So listen, the book is called The Revolutionary School Culture. Excited about it. You know, it's been a project working for about, I started writing, I think I came up with the idea 2018, started kind of writing here and there 2019, and you know, now we got to a point where it's finished. You know, shout outs to my wife, shout outs to just my brother, who's a professor at the University of Denver, you know, during this journey, just, you know, motivating me. They're looking over it, trying to just, you know, make sure it's right. But for me, the main thing is 6 principles. There's 6 principles that I go by that has helped establish the U in regards to school culture. It's going to be a great book to make everyone that revolutionary educator at their school site. They'll be able to take this book and be like, hey, man, I want to do something with my constructive environment at my school. Well, guess what? I got a chapter that's going to talk about the experiences of building a great constructive environment at your school. Like, man, I want to build an aspirational environment where kids love to come to school. Well, guess what? You can go to the aspirational environment and learn about that. You know what? I'm an aspiring leader. I want to know how I can create a great organizational culture where, you know, I can retain the best educators and they will work. Oh, guess what? We got an organizational culture chapter that's talking about that. You know what? I don't know about restorative justice practices. You know, I'm thinking about just discipline and you know what, is my way or the highway. Guess what? We got a chapter strictly talking about restorative practices and experiences that I've done with restorative practices and the amazing thing. No way is it you do everything and you just got it, you know what I mean? But what it is, it's just that, you know, my experiences from just being a Black man in America and growing up with the experiences I had through education and sharing the little things that I learned along the way, from the great people like Baruti Kafele to the great people like my father to the great educators just doing amazing things, bringing it all together in one book. I think that's what you get from the revolutionary school culture.
Whew, I'm already excited, man. You have to let me know when to pre-order.
Man, yeah, I gotta get all that good stuff.
Let me know when to pre-order.
And listen, everybody, this is on some, you know, if y'all know about West Coast, if you know about Nipsey Hussle, you know, if you know it's the grassroots. This book is the, you know, popping up the trunk, just real people, like, you know, I'm quoting hip hop artists. I'm quoting people that just make a difference in my life, because I learned more from some people that you wouldn't expect from than the EDD or the PhD person. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something to be said about the neighborhood scholar, you know, the neighborhood person that got the wisdom that can teach you the game versus just the person that's just the academic artist, you know? So I think it's important. You know, I pay homage to neighborhood scholars because there was people in my neighborhood that gave us game, and they ain't go to no college, but they had all the game that could teach us and saved our lives. You know what I'm saying? So that's just what it's about.
Nah, yes, sir. And as a hip hop head, you know, I grew up on Brand Nubian. I grew up on NWA, the Ice Cubes from around your way. I grew up on Public Enemy, like a lot of conscious rappers. You know, those are the people who I listened to, you know, growing up. So I know exactly what you're talking about when we talk about knowledge of self and understanding who we are as a culture. We didn't get that from school. So hip hop was really our school when it came to that.
Facts.
And that is a perfect segue into our lightning round. So I have a few quick hitters to ask you. And the first question I have is, well, name your top 5 rappers from
top five.
from your neighborhood. Top 5 rappers from Compton.
Top 5 rappers from Compton.
Your top 5.
All right, so you got to start off with some of the OGs. So you got I ain't gonna just say NWA because that's cheating, but I'm gonna say Eazy-E. I'm gonna say Dr. Dre. All right, I'm gonna say DJ Quick.
Woo.
I'm gonna say K Dot. You know, Kendrick.
Yeah.
You
gotta put them in there.
And I'm gonna put the Game in there too. Those are top 5.
All right, that's solid. That's solid.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
All right.
Boy, the Game in there.
Other than your book, what is one book that every educator should read right now? Should have in their library?
Y'all don't got the Rudy Kafele right here. Y'all don't got this closing the attitude gap. Man, this a game changer right here. Closing the attitude gap, man. This is a game changer. It's a good read, short read, but closing the attitude gap, man, is a game changer. Game changer for sure. So Rudy Kafele, closing the attitude gap. You can get it at principalkafele.com. I am not a sponsor. I am not getting no money from it. So just make sure y'all go and get that book. It's a dope book.
And Principal Kafele just announced that he's dropping the Social Justice 50.
Yeah,
the Social Justice 50. So that's going to come out early 2021. Y'all need to go get any book that has his name on it. Not just that book, any book that has his name on it.
He's booming.
He's different. He's different. All right. So if someone were to direct a movie based on your life, who would be the actor that would play you in this biopic? Who's your choice?
You know what? Listen, man. I don't even know. Listen, who's gonna play me in a biopic? Listen, man. Listen, we're gonna have different phases. We're gonna have different phases.
All right, let's do it.
We're gonna have dang, man. That's a tough question. I'm trying to think of the bald heads out there that can represent for me, man. Dang, who the bald head actors out there that can do something, man?
I mean, they don't have to be bald, you know.
I need a bald head. I gotta represent for the
costumes and all that. They could do something.
I gotta represent for the skillets, man. Let's see. Who do I like? You know what? I like Michael B. Jordan, man.
Great choice.
I like Killmonger, man. Like, he got to bring that attitude, though. You got to bring that Killmonger attitude.
All right.
I think we're going to do that. And then we're going to leave it at that, man. That's all I got with the actors.
All right, cool. Michael B. Jordan, great choice.
That's it.
Great choice. All right. And I got one more.
All right, let's get it.
Who should be a future guest on this podcast?
Man, I think you should get have you had Shivy on?
Nah, man, I haven't had Shivy on, but you know, Shivy a busy brother. He's hard to get. He doing the TD Talk Live right now as we're talking. So
have you had Principal Akbar Cook?
You know what? No, but if you have connects to him, let a brother know. Like I'm trying to get on.
I gotta connect with him. Dennis McKenzie. He's a good principal, former principal. He do off school grounds. Yeah, man. Yeah, we could. Yeah, but I think those are good starts, man. Those are good people that. And then also I just put in there. Her name is Queendom. She's on Instagram, Queendom. She's a dope educator, man. She's been doing a lot of stuff for Black youth in her classroom. So I can connect y'all to for sure.
Yeah, I think I know Queendom too. I think I know Queendom. Is her name Latanya?
You know, well, it's crazy because I just be knowing people by their little.
All right, because I know someone who has a Queendom business and.
Dang, went. We back? Are we back yet?
Yes. All right. So, one last thing. Tell everybody where they can follow you on social media.
All right, listen. The best place to follow me is on Instagram at Principal Raw. You can follow me on Twitter at Principal Raw and Facebook at Principal Raw. that right there is, I mean, if you following those pages, you're going to get all the updates on the book. You're going to get all the updates on when the book is out, how you can pre-order the book, the Revolutionary School Culture. It's coming, y'all. It's going to be exciting. But yeah, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook, but mainly Instagram. That's the key where it's all going down at.
Man, and I wish we had more time to talk, brother, but Principal Rahh, it's been an honor to have you on the show. Thank you again for taking some time to speak with the community, and we might need to do a part 2 of this because there's still a lot to unpack, but I appreciate you, brother. Keep up the great work.
All right, I appreciate you, King.
All right, man. So there we have it, people. So right now, I know that I've been away for a long time and I've been working, y'all. I've been doing a lot of work to get ready for this new season. So what I want to do at this time is let you know a little bit about what I've been doing over the past couple months. So the first thing I want to talk about is our new online apparel line. So Identity Talk has an online apparel line right now on Teesprings. You can get hoodies, t-shirts, tote bags, and all kinds of merchandise. So you want to go ahead and visit the Teespring store and check out some of our latest designs. You could also follow us on Instagram at IDTALK_apparel, where we feature a lot of these designs. And I'm actually wearing one of the designs right now. So this is actually one of our hoodies. Stay true to the teacher in you. So if you love what you see, go ahead and get you a hoodie. It's fall time. We have to stay warm. So let's make sure we do that. Another thing that's been going on behind the scenes is our Identity Talk for Educators virtual school, which is now open on Teachable. So if you're a new educator, if you're a veteran educator, or even an administrator, and you're looking for some more professional development and a way to shape your own identity as an educator, this is the course for you. You can register for our courses right now at Teachable. And we currently have 2 courses that are in our school. We have the Shape the Teacher Identity 101 course, which is primarily for new and early career teachers, but anyone can register. And it's all about shaping teacher identity. And then we have the SPELL program, which is the Self-Publishing Educators Learning Lab. And this is specifically a course that is for any educators who want to learn how to self-publish a book, like Principal Rahh, like myself, and so many others. So if you're interested in any of those services, make sure that you reach out to me at identitytalk4educators@gmail.com, and we can connect there. And that is basically it, people. So we had an incredible episode. I want to thank Principal Rahh again for taking the time to talk with us. And we have another powerful episode next week with next level teacher Jonathan Alsheimer. That's going to be one that you don't want to miss. But once again, make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all streaming platforms. And until then, I want to wish you all a good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.